With me is Jean Romsey, who's an 83-year-old teacher of English, music, painting, and still a line dancer with the Chinese Association of Southampton. Welcome, Jean. How are you, Jean?
Well, feeling a little bit reminiscent at the moment, because you're going to ask me questions about my childhood and where I was brought up, which was a long time ago.
A long time ago, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Today. Jean, tell us, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in India, in the city of Calcutta, which in fact a lot of you would know as the Black Hole of Calcutta. I don't know why, but it was the most beautiful place to be growing up. India itself was fantastic, and I don't think you could find a better place to grow up, because you have so much freedom, you had so much interesting things to find out. The history itself, in fact, is so beautiful. Now, it was a British colony, and of course, that means that a lot of us would be speaking English nowadays. And if you want to hire anybody at all, anyone coming from India would be very suitable for any jobs we have in England.
I love that. And is that because you had that exposure to the language as well? Is that what you're saying?
Well, language is absolutely fantastic for me, because I could pick up language very, very quickly. And even whilst I was in India, struggling to get to grip with English, I was learning French and I was learning German. And basically, I even spoke the local language quite well. Unfortunately, with age, I'm forgetting a lot of words. And
you grew up in Calcutta as well?
Yes, I grew up in Calcutta, but we had a lot of chance to travel. So we went to Rajasthan, we went to Italy, to Delhi, to Bombay, to various places. And it's a very, very free country to travel.
Tell us a little bit of what life was like for you growing up.
Well, I suppose I could remember too well that we're a very hard-working family. Calcutta is a very big city. It's got a lovely place called the New Market, which is in the center of town. And around us, we had cinemas, we had lots and lots of restaurants and places that you could actually go to. The Maidan was an important place, because it's a very, very big area of green trees, and we also have the Victoria Memorial, which is something that you go to most weekends. And it's a beautiful marble place, and we really had a lot of interesting things to do. And but my problem had been, having studied Chinese till I was 10 years old, I had a lot of problem trying to get to grip with English when I was 10, and at a school which is run by Irish nuns, and they had very high standards. And I found that I was last in class in the first year, coming up to middle in the second year, and by the third year I found that yes, I had overcome my problem.
So it wasn't too far.
It wasn't too far.
You spoke English, you speak Chinese, you speak Indian as well? Indian language? What language?
I spoke Hindi as well.
Hindi as well.
Yes. But because I was studying in the British school of Loreto, we had to learn two Indian languages. One is Hindi and the other one is Bengali. Bengali is the provincial language, and that was very difficult for me. Simply because the writing is the same or similar, but different. Unlike English, where you can speak English in different dialects, but the written language is the same. Also is the Chinese. The Chinese language has the same written language, although the dialects are all different.
It's fascinating.
It is, yes.
What did your parents do in Calcutta?
My parents were, again, very hard-working business people. My father was importing, exporting. We exported a lot of spices to Hong Kong, and we imported a lot of beautiful stuff, like painted silk and Chinese porcelain, Oh, so beautiful. So every day after school at 3 o'clock, I would walk down to the shop to help my mother to wrap all things that she was selling. So for me, it was a beautiful hobby rather than work.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yes.
So is that what you did? What did you do?
Well, I eventually I went to university and I got a degree. And again, it was languages that took me over the mark. I did French, which is something that people were looking at me and thinking, why French? But I love the language so much. So I got a degree which is in English, French and education. And it was hard work because I used to go to evening classes to learn all about the commercial subjects like typing and shorthand. And eventually I was doing a course in company secretary. So my life was full to the brim.
What made you leave?
Well, that is a very good question. Until today, I still don't know why I left. Because life was so good in India. Mm-hmm. Except for 2 events in India, I don't think that anybody would be able to say they don't like the country. The 2 events were, firstly, Second World War, when Japan joined forces with joined forces with Germany to bomb the British colonies in the southeast of Asia. And Calcutta was one of the targets. And we, as a family, had to leave with hundreds and thousands of people to run off towards the Himalayan foothills to avoid the bombing. And the second event was to do with the partition of India, because they had Hindus and Muslims who had been living with each other as neighbors for thousands of years, and suddenly there was this desire to have their own country. And so Pakistan was actually formed during that time, and all the Muslims had to move towards Pakistan, and all those Hindu people living in the Pakistan areas had to move back to India. And that meant a lot of chaos and lots of killing on the streets, which in fact left a lot of bad memories in our mind. But apart from that, I don't think there's anything that I can say was detrimental to living in India. Why did I leave? I still don't know.
But and did your parents leave with you?
No, I decided to leave because my parents had businesses and they were still running it at the time. And I just felt I knew so much about Britain, about the history, that I had to come out and find out for myself. So I spent nearly a year applying for a visa, applying for work voucher, so that I could come to Britain. And on the 25th of March 1965, I arrived at Gravesend, and you can imagine my mind at the moment was, why did I do that? Because as I came off the ship, I was on the P&O passenger liner called Orcades. We landed at Gravesend, and the fog was so thick you couldn't see the end of your hand. You couldn't see your fingers as you hold it in front of you. And but anyway, things changed very quickly because the fog's lifted, and here I am still in Britain.
And was that your first exposure to fog?
It was.
Couldn't see the end of your hand.
Couldn't see the end of your hand.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. It's fascinating. So it was by ship. You
yes,
came over.
Yes,
that's
it
interesting.
Was, yes.
Interesting. And did you stay in London?
Well, yes, I stayed in London because that's where I landed. And fortunately for me, I had my brother had a friend who lived in London, and he came out to get me. So my mother was very anxious. She packed me 5 different trunks of things that I need to have when I came to England, because when I left India, I was only allowed £3 in my pocket, because that was the exchange that we were allowed to take out. and I couldn't spend any money on board. I couldn't go sightseeing up ashore when I was on the passenger ship. And so when I first came, I was very fortunate that my mother was able to send me some money via our agent in Hong Kong. So I had £50 in my pocket, and it was fantastic.
Tell us your most vivid memories of home.
Home. Now, we were very fortunate. When I was born in a little house in Chinatown where we had a grocery shop. And the grocery shop was below and we were living above. And so as a child, we weren't allowed to run around because it's going to make a lot of noise. And so we had to almost speak quietly and walk slowly. So, but nevertheless, I managed to fall down those stairs 3 times and broke the top of my head.
Oh my.
But anyway, it knocked some sense into me. And yes, but later on, we found that the corporation wanted to build a very big road and they wanted us to move from there. But anyway, my father was very, very, I suppose, industrious in some ways. And he managed to find a house which was out near Park Street, which was near all the big hotels. And it was a colonial home. And we had 4 bathrooms and 8 bedrooms. That was a lot of space, which in fact is fantastic. And in India, in fact, a lot of people were sleeping rough. So our entrance to the house had a very big area. And we found that a lot of people were sleeping on the grounds in front. So if you came home late, you'd be walking through bodies. and they were just sleeping there. The next morning, they would be gone. They would be gone to work. But it was fine. It was lovely to know that we could provide spaces for people to sleep. So, and the back garden was very big. So my father converted it into a sauce-making factory because to import sauces like soy sauce and chili sauce was quite expensive as a project. So we manufactured soy sauce and chili sauce. And that was good because we supplied to all the restaurants locally.
It sounds interesting.
Yes.
I mean, so very industrious. So lots of siblings? Because if you were in a big house like that, it sounds as if...
Well, originally I thought we were a family of 5 children. I was number 7. I thought, why 7? Eventually, during the Japanese invasion of China, I found out that we did have another little family who were living in China with siblings older than myself. And they had to leave because they couldn't really tolerate the Japanese rule. So by the time they arrived, we suddenly found that we were a family of 10 children.
Amazing. Are these, Jean, your last memories of your home?
Well, it's very difficult to pinpoint my memories because even now, occasionally, my mind would just simply hark back to incidents and things. We used to travel quite a lot because my father was a really keen traveller. So we had made trips to Darjeeling where we could ride horses. We had been to Ranchi and we've been to the beach, and it was very, very varied life. And I suppose it gave us a good start in life because we were able to adapt to any situation that comes along. Now, in Gopalpur, the beach we went to, the waves were so strong, the local people who were looking after us would make us wear straw hats to go into the water because otherwise the waves might push you and really hit your brain. So it was really funny. We had conical hats wearing these straw colourful hats and trying to learn to swim.
So they did that to keep you, so that they could keep an eye on you and knew where you were.
And to keep us safe.
All right,
yes,
that's
because
interesting.
the waves are quite strong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't Darjeeling where they have tea as well?
Well, Darjeeling is up halfway up the mountain. Himalayas. Mm-hmm. And that's where they grow a lot of tea. Yes, and tea plantation is one of the main things. And but in Darjeeling itself, it is in fact the summer place for most British people who are working there on government projects. They would escape to in the summertime when the temperature is over 40 degrees.
Yes.
Sometimes. Yes.
Interesting.
Now, Darjeeling is a very interesting place. We have a mixture of all sorts of hill people, and of course people from Tibet, people from Kurseong, people from Shimla, and all these. They all come along and they mix together, and the costumes they wear are fantastically beautiful, colourful. And I remember spending quite a few summer holidays and learning to ride the ponies. But one occasion, my sister was riding in front of me, and she started to turn her head to talk to me. And by doing that, the horse slipped his head down, and she slided right across the front and bruised her nose and her forehead. And she had to sit her holiday. So it wasn't, it was a very interesting place.
Sounds pretty colourful.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and it sounds relaxing as well.
Absolutely, yes. But full of activities.
And full of activities. Jean, tell us about the travel journey to Southampton from your home country.
Well, I didn't come directly into Southampton. I went to London because I came to Gravesend in the boat, and so I arrived on the 25th of March, and I was working on the 1st of April at Alfred Marks. Now, how many of you would remember Alfred Marks? It's an organisation that would find you jobs and put companies in touch with people looking for jobs. And I was able to find a job there immediately for a few days. And then I was interviewed from, I think about 3 or 4 days of different interviews. And I got a job with Fortis Limited, which in fact is an Italian company that had hotels and restaurants all over Britain as well as the world. And it was a fantastic job, because working for them means that I was eating very well indeed at the White Bear Inn, which was very plush, just underneath the Piccadilly Circus, around the corner from where my work was on Regent Street. And from there I moved on to the Birmingham Post and Mail in Fleet Street. And that was another interesting job, because it was news instantly for the Birmingham Post in the morning and the evening mail. And with that job, I came to be one of those lucky enough to have all the theatre tickets. My love of theatre became so much that when I came to Southampton, I was very disappointed not to find many theatres at all. But today, of course, it's quite different, because we have the Mayflower, which has got all the West End shows. Plus, we have so many amateur theatres are everywhere. We have one in Shirley, one in Romsey, and of course, you still have theatres in Winchester, and you can go to Chichester, and you have such a lot of wonderful performances. So we're very, very lucky to be in Southampton. But when I first came to Southampton, it was in 1973. I met my husband in 1972, and he had a business in Southampton for photography and design. And that was really fantastic for me, because it was an opportunity for me to go back to design, which I loved. Because in London, I was working in commercial premises. First the Fortis, secondly Birmingham Post and Mail. The third one was my main job in London, was the overseas containers. Now with the overseas containers, I was really partly able to help the containerization to be spread around, not just in Britain, but around the world, because our directors were going to Japan, to Australia, to all the European countries, opening up container ports. And our container ships were absolutely the first biggest vessels to ply the seas. And they were taking tons and tons of goods in containers, as opposed to when we first opened the business, where people were carrying huge amount of goods on their backs and pushing trolleys and pulling amazing amount of things to and from the docks. So with containerization, I think we started the 21st century.
And your job in that was
I was a press officer.
Okay.
So I was, because of my background with Birmingham Post and Mail, I was able to liaise with a lot of journalists writing about shipping.
Very impressive.
Yes.
And to be part of that global sort of scene must have been really, really proud, or a proud moment.
Very, very interesting, because we didn't just have to deal with the shipping and the goods and the transport. We were also dealing with strikes from dockers, from various things. And it was one of those periods in life that I don't think we're going to see again. Things were happening. The 21st century came very fast, but we were still dealing with labour that was a 19th century labour.
So that was really a crucial time in history, but also for you, and you were part of that. So, just to say, I feel privileged having you here with us and telling us your story. Yeah. But tell us, what were your initial impressions of Southampton?
Yes, now that living in London is a fast pace, full of distractions. You have a lot to do. You didn't have much more time than anybody else, and consequently you sleep less. But coming to Southampton was so amazingly peaceful. It's something that you probably come to for a holiday in those days. But today we are so lucky to have the cruising ships coming down to port. We have the containers still going through the port. We have every single type of water traffic you could find anywhere in the world. And so although it is a very quiet, not so quiet when you're actually into business and into activities, really. But no, my impression was it's a very nice city to be in, and it still is. And today you couldn't find more variety of food and people and languages everywhere. Just amazing.
It is. Good impressions, you tell us. And who supported you in those early days?
Well, I think I would say I supported myself all the way.
Right.
Because having to start work 4 days after arriving in this country, I felt I was invincible. But I met my husband. His name is Jean Romsey, and you probably know him because he was in the photography business for a long, long time. And he used to be able to take photographs for all the companies around Southampton and Hampshire. He would travel out to anywhere at all to take photographs, including taking to the air for aerial photography. But when he first started, he had just come back from a 7-year travel around the world, and he only said goodbye to his mother for 2 years and didn't come back for 7. And of course he was interesting to talk to. So we had a lot of things in common. Today we're still traveling. Now, when we retired 20 years ago, we spent about the last 20 years traveling the world.
Amazing. Amazing, Jean. I have to say, it's amazing. So he was part of your support structure back in those early days.
I think I was his support because he was a one-man band at the time, and I felt that with my business background back in India, that I was able to help him. And indeed we did. We actually did very well. And for quite a long time we had studios in small places. But when we opened in the Avenue, it was good. because then we had a lot of photographs for families, for weddings, for commercial, for industrial. Roy still do a lot of things for Rotary clubs and all sorts of sort of leisurely things. But he can't stop taking photographs.
So I'm just going to change this statement question. Jean supported Roy in the early days arriving in Southampton.
No, well, I wouldn't go for as far as that.
But you just said that, Jean.
Yeah, well, I felt, although my job was very satisfying in London, I just felt that it would give me a lot of chance to develop the business side.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's important, isn't it? That working together, developing it together. You have this experience coming from Calcutta, already qualified, straight off the boat. Literally is that statement, isn't it? And you get into work and your experience.
Yes.
So coming down to Southampton for us, an asset.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Interesting. Describe your early experience of, let's say, food, schools, the work, the job atmosphere at the time for you.
Well, coming from London, which is such a cosmopolitan place and so busy in every type of work situation, it was very quiet coming to Southampton, simply because it was a much smaller market and small businesses have really a great opportunity to grow. And I'm talking about small business because Roy's business was a single-man person. He was one-man band, and then he employed someone to help him print photographs and develop them. But he still had to do everything himself. So when I joined him, I was literally back down to sweeping the floor and washing the cups and making coffee. Because then we were three-man band. Right. But the thing is, because businesses were growing in Southampton, and there were lots and lots of companies that would have loved to have photographers in their own working team, but obviously it's not a viable situation. So as photographer, my husband had work from morning till night and sometimes into the night, because by the time the evening comes along, we had 10 minutes to eat our dinner and he was off again to the Polygon Hotel or the Post House Hotel to take photographs for events, social photographs. So, and then we had to number them, making sure that the right person gets the right photograph. So there was a lot of work involved before we can deliver the photographs the next day. And so from that point of view, we didn't have a lot of time to appreciate what Southampton was. It was a nice place to work, less traffic to get through, and nice homes to go back to, because we were able to buy our own home very soon. But I think it's only up to now, when I retired, that I realised that this city is so green and the people are so friendly, and you can stop and talk to anybody on the street and feel perfectly at home.
It's one of the first things a lot of people describe coming into Southampton, isn't it? It's the green.
The Common is a fantastic place for everybody, isn't it? You can hold events, festivals, you can do anything. You can take family picnics, and you have the cowherd where you can just stop and have a bite and just go on. It is absolutely an amazing place.
Jean, your knowledge of the place is just enthralling me. I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by it. And I do need to sort of inject this in there. So the business on the avenue, you were at the early days, almost a pioneer, would you say, in business in Southampton? So
I think you're right. I think I suppose hindsight is an amazing thing, isn't it? But at that time, you are so concentrated on developing the business, you don't realize what you're doing. All you're doing is trying to get all the customers satisfied.
Yes.
And book as many appointments as you possibly can. But having said that, we did have a lot of things that we joined. We joined the Round Table, we joined the Southampton Publicity Association, we joined all sorts of other things, arts and craft and everything else that we were able to just join. finding the time to fit all this in means that you really didn't have enough sleep every day.
I thought you were getting 10 minutes. That was a break. But you paint a wonderful, involved picture. You know, your life in Calcutta and London and coming to Southampton seemed to have this theme of getting involved in the community and in the affairs at the time. So it sounds very fulfilling, Jean. I have to tell you that. That's how it's coming across. So,
well, until about 10 years ago, I had not realized I was coming into old age.
Old age? You said you're only 83 years old.
Yes, I just don't know where the years have gone. But it is true. The more active you are, the quicker the time goes. And the quicker the time goes, and the less you realize that you're getting to that age where people are looking at you thinking, what are you doing, line dancing?
Well, that's a good one, Jean. Line dancing at 83. It's fascinating. And I'm sure people listening to this podcast in the museum right now some people might remember, if they are of a certain age as well, those early days and what you're talking about. And what was the studio called, or the business?
Well, we had Roy's name on it, Roy Romsey Studios.
Right, Roy Romsey Studios. Jean, it's such a wonderful story and a really great colourful picture of life in those early days. Tell us something that you laugh about from those early days or in those early days.
It's difficult to pinpoint what we laugh at. I seem to laugh at anything.
You have me laughing too. Just because it's such a nice scene you paint.
Well, I think, in fact, when you have a good imagination, you tend to laugh at anything at all. So I suppose for my childhood in India, we started laughing at most things. And when you're in a big family, you tend to have to laugh at jokes, and anything funny that anybody does is funny. So that's what probably put me into a situation of laughing at most things. But some of the things you laugh at, you really shouldn't. It's when someone falls over or someone does something silly. Now, one of the things that I remember most when I came to London was trying to find Piccadilly Circus. And, of course, you sort of stop the first person who walks by you, and it happened to be a man who's got a nice rolled-up umbrella and walking very stridently across. And I just said, excuse me, but how do I find Piccadilly Circus? And he turned to me and said, well, you walk this way for 6 minutes and you turn left and walk for another 3 minutes and you'll find it there. And I thought, 6 minutes? 3 minutes? And I literally laughed in his face. Anyway, I thanked him and he walked on. And I was thinking, now, walking 6 minutes with my little feet, I'm only 5'2", and he was 6 foot something, I think. So, well, eventually I did find the place, but he was right, it wasn't far.
But was it 6 minutes for you?
I think it was longer.
Longer.
But there you are. These are funny things that you think about. And I would imagine for him, it wasn't funny at all.
I think they say, for your mental health and your well-being, laughter is really good. And,
yes.
Even in theatre, they're doing just laughing shows, right?
Yes,
it's a big thing on the internet as well, Jean. If you go on the internet, but it certainly is something that during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, where people were having just, laughing sessions, laughing, it helps,
Now, you know that in India, you have a group of ladies who actually go around laughing. It's an exercise.
Wow.
Yes, and if you wanted to join them, you can go and join them and laugh for an hour. You can just go, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah. Amazing. I think it's wonderful. I mean, we certainly have been doing some laughing in this podcast. It's great, and again, it's great having you with us and telling your story about those early days. Since you arrived, Jean, has much changed in the city and with you?
The city of Southampton has changed tremendously. From the quiet little town that I found when I first arrived in 1973, it has grown to be a cosmopolitan city with food so diverse that you could find any country's food here better than anywhere else. It is amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, I like curry. My husband liked curry, and you could eat curry every day in a different restaurant every day for a month. And Chinese restaurant, they're everywhere. And honestly, if you haven't eaten a Chinese meal, you should go along and do so. And so with Indian food. But now, of course, when I first came, the only place we could find foreign food was in Bedford Place, Italian restaurant for pasta. That was the only thing we could find.
All right.
Yes. And then there was a Chinese restaurant around near Mayflower where they were doing food, but not too many. But today, gosh, you could find Chinese food from